I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Due to the current federal and state emergency declarations, the Minnesota Directive to Residents to Stay at Home and guidance about limiting person-to-person contact due to the COVID-19 coronavirus pandemic, this meeting of the Lisle School Board is being conducted in accordance with Minnesota Statutes 13D.021, meetings by telephone or other electronic means. Due to the health pandemic, the school board determined that it is not feasible for the public to attend this meeting at the regular meeting location due to the health pandemic. Persons may monitor this meeting from a remote location by Zoom. Information on joining the meeting can be found on the school website. Public comments prior to the meeting can be made by contacting the superintendent or the board chair by email. This meeting is being recorded. Access to the recording will be available on the school district's website as soon as is reasonably possible. Agenda changes and additions. Does everybody have their list? Consent agenda, addition of E. Approval of a financial donation from Marcus and Park Baseball Association for the baseball team. Under reports and presentations, the addition of Cynthia Shepard and Brian Hagan. And under action and discussion, we have considered changing the name of the Spanish club to the International Club. Is there a motion to approve the agenda with additions or changes? Jerry, is there a second? Dave, all in favor? Okay, opposed? Approval of the minutes. Consider the approval of the minutes of the school board meeting, August 19th, 2020. I'll make a motion to approve it. Krista, is there a second?
No second.
Wendy, all in favor? Opposed? Public comments? Nothing? Okay. We'll move on to school board committee updates. Any updates from anyone on the committees? No? All right. What's that?
Negotiations, library, that meeting.
We just talked about basically the library was kind of in the process of straightening that out, getting hours posted, differentiating between the city and the where we go with that under the circumstances, because there's classrooms in here, having the hours be possibly like after 2, have to come in. We don't have it all straightened out yet, but
Because the city contributes to that position,
Yeah.
or they have in the past. So we were just kind of talking about that and what our options are now that Diane's not here moving forward.
kind of the job description going forward, you know.
Negotiations.
Going well, as far as I'm concerned.
The first meeting on Monday night. So we'll get another one scheduled next week. Second round.
Any other ones on there that have met? No? Okay, we'll move on to the consent agenda. Is there a motion to approve the consent agenda? Sherry, is there a second? Wendy, thank you. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Financial reports. Bradley?
All right, I will start in your packet. Liz.
I know.
Yeah. There you find the right stack of papers.
Jamie, how do I?
I have unmuted mine. Somebody else is still picking me up. Yeah. I know, I'm waiting. I'm hearing the echo every time I say anything. Are we good? All right, so we have in our packet our financial report through August. So I'll just point out a couple of highlights. We've been getting some state aid payments, which is always welcome. They come in about the time we need to make a payroll. So timed pretty well there. That's both general education aid and special education aid. Looking at our expenditures, we're actually down a little on our expenditures through August. We've done, up until we started school here in September, we were still kind of running a little skinnier on staff and hours, and just going off a summer where we really didn't have people in the building. So that is definitely going to catch up to us starting when we look at September's reports. But staffing wise, a little less in expenditures. Then one other thing that definitely jumps off the page a little bit, back in 2019, about this time, we bought a school bus. So when you look at the percentages down in the bottom right hand corner, expenditures by object, that one kind of jumps off the page, that we'd spent about $150,000 out of capital expenditures at this time that year. We have not made such a purchase this year, so we'll need to get a van later this year, but that's some months down the road. So that's good news for us. I don't want to spend too much time on this because it is only 2 months into the year. So we'll get deeper when we get to September and October and stuff. So. All right. Turning the page, you can get to our other funds. In the summer, we don't have a whole heck of a lot going on with our food service or our community education. Mostly just waiting for programs to start on those fronts. We did get a state aid payment for our debt service fund. So that's progress. Flip the page one more time and we can look at our treasurer's report. August was a very good month from a cash standpoint. So if you recall, a couple months ago, we were talking about property taxes being delayed. We actually got a supplemental payment from Freeborn County. So most of our tax base is in Moore County, but Freeborn was able to send us an extra payment. So that was really nice that they were able to make that happen. So, but additionally in August, we got our state aids and we got different things coming in. So it's always helpful when we can have our cash build up a little bit before we get started on the year. So any questions on any of those reports? All right, the next one on the agenda is payments. So and again, I've got the report now showing all the payments all at one time. So I'll flip through that. There's a payment there for Klaus Concrete. That's the pad out back of the school that got completed in August. SHI is a technology vendor. We bought some laptops for our senior class. So we're hoping in the future to be able to get more laptops, but right now everybody everywhere is buying laptops. So the supply is basically drained right now. The other one I wanted to call your attention to there, Delaga London Public Finance. That is for our LED lighting lease. So you'll see that same amount on the report every month for a long time, but that's what's going on with that one. Yeah. Yeah, the goal was to allow for a more college-ready experience for our seniors. So they did have devices, but not laptops. So okay, that's a good idea. Yeah. Yeah, that's, yeah. All right. Yeah, any other questions on any of the payments?
A motion to approve the payments? Did you already get that? All in favor? Aye.
That's it for me for a little while.
All right, so I've got a couple of things to bring to your attention tonight. First of all, we had our inspections today, our bus inspections. So the community probably saw the state patrol sitting outside, and may have been surprised, but it actually went very well. We did have a bus and a van that had to be grounded for some. There was something that came up that they didn't catch, but they should be ready to go by tomorrow, or by the end of the day tomorrow, unless there's a parts issue. I specifically want to thank Wayne and Dave Frank, Don Block, and then the rest of the drivers for all of their work, noticing things over the summer. The weird thing is that when the buses have been sitting for that long, Dave could probably explain why, but the longer they sit, the more they deteriorate. So, and the state patrol guy even said, he goes, this having the 3 months extra was actually worse for our buses, but overall they've held up really better than probably most schools. We were, as Bradley mentioned, Van 9. I reported earlier that it was a December 31st end date. The state patrol said today it's actually January 31st, so we have an extra month at least to shop. But we'll start looking at this in October. We probably will have to place one on order for a new van to replace that one, and then decide what we're going to do with 9. Regarding our fleet, I've always, our goal is always to have a 3-year wind or space between the buses. We haven't had that in the past. We had to catch up. And so the last three, 16, 18, and 20 are 2 years apart. But I know that 03 right now is sitting still. We didn't even have it inspected today. We would have to invest quite a bit if we needed it. And two other ones have, they'll last for a while, but are having some concerns. So I am going to at least pursue another grant if I can find one. I don't know what the timeline is going to be, but at least we'll see. It was an awful grant to fill out, I'll admit, from my own perspective. Bradley can back me up on that one from the questions I gave him, but at least it'll give us a window to see what we can do with that. Wayne said about 15. 15 is what you kind of want to get, but 20 would, anywhere between 15 and 20. So really, 03 and 04 are at that point of 15, 16 years. So we've got our life, especially 03, we've gotten our money's worth out of that one. But it's showing its age, obviously. So our enrollment is actually holding steady compared to April. We're still actually up, considering we've had a couple families homeschool, and we have 2 students full-time PSEO, 3 part-time. And considering we also had some students who've gone to the ALC. So our enrollment actually is holding up pretty good. And then the next thing, this might be a hot topic, but the State High School League, I sent you guys an email earlier this week, some frustration that I had. First of all, there was an email that was sent to Bill Smith today, to all ADs, that the State High School League board is looking at having a meeting on 9 o'clock on Monday morning. They will be looking at some further data. In the email sent today was a survey, asking some questions to each district, whether or not they want to play football and volleyball or not. Bill and I talked about this. The way I look at it, and there's 2 ways to look at it. One is you can kind of stay in a shell and be fearful of everything you want to do, or you show the students that, hey, you have to overcome the problems and the things, and you move forward. With that, we decided to, from the questions asked, that we said we would like to play. There are some questions that came that still that I did not like, and I know another conference sent similar questions to the State High School League that are very good questions. What would the season actually look like? If they would have had more questions in there, it would have been even more enlightening. How long would the season look like? What does that do to the winter season? What is the capacity for fans? How many players? What are the restrictions on the bus? Because the transporting to and from 2 games to another school, what are the restrictions? So there's a lot of different variables that they did not share with that. I'm sure they'll discuss that on Monday's meeting, but there is a chance there might be fall sports, a condensed version of fall sports if the state.
Talking all about if there would be a outbreak or whatever, and they had to stop that.
Nothing in the email was just as simple. It was 8 questions, I think, maybe 10 questions. I wish there would have been more questions for that too, personally, but
What are we doing with school? What the kid gets,
Yeah.
what do we do?
well, then we follow the decision tree, and that's probably what will happen. What happens in the spring, because right now the season is in the spring. Will that affect? Because one of the comments I made was if you are going to move it, what happens to the spring? I prefer actually baseball and softball and track starting a little bit later than beginning of March, because the field and weather conditions, it's terrible. So that's one thing with State High School League. The other thing is the bill that I got, that every superintendent got this past week from the State High School League. I would not want to be on their board right now because they're getting hammered, I believe. They sent this bill. It's in 3 parts. One is the membership fee, and personally, I'm okay with that part. We went for years with no increase. and it went up a little bit. It's still more than I like to pay, but at least it's understandable. It's the other one is the COVID installment fee. And there's a couple of issues with that and I met with superintendents in SMAC this past week, and we talked about this at length. And there were, one person made a comment, and I think we'd all agree, our money should be going to the education of our students. And if that involves sports, fine. But this is in my opinion, a fee to cover up the loss of revenue, and I could say even more, but we're being recorded. So, but there are decisions that they've made in the past that they could be in a better shape right now than they are. And now all of us schools are having to pay. The two problems that I have with that also is that because we are in a co-op with Pacelli, we're being double paid. We're having double charged on that. So we're having to pay an additional $6,000 for this when Southland, Grand Meadow, they're being paid on their own, whatever rate they're at. So I average it out with Austin. $6,000 on over 140 kids, roughly, between the two schools. It's $43 each student. For Austin, for instance, I don't know what their enrollment is for high school, but I just guessed 1,200. 9,000 for 1,200, that's $7.50. To me, that's not equitable. And the state talks repeatedly about equity, and we are being, small schools across the state are having to pay more for it. It is not equitable. And so just so you know, our SMAC board superintendent sent Eric Mertens, who's the executive director, an email yesterday. We sent him another one today asking, we look forward to his response. I also sent an email to him today with Kane Malo from Pacelli asking this specific question about this. So I don't know what response I'm going to get, but I will tell you at this point, all of us superintendents within SMAC have agreed we will not pay this fee until we get better answers. And if that means that the organization falters, so I don't think that money should be going to it. So
Did they send any information, numbers as to how they came up with that?
they did not. There's a lot of holes in here. The only thing they came up with, as you saw in an email, was this graph that really says, the bigger schools are, the Edinas and the Minnetonkas of the world are having to pay $11,000. We're paying $6,000, or because it's an LP, or $3,000 for us. And it just, when we understand the financial crisis they're in, but our schools, small schools across the state, we make up the biggest number, and we're the ones having to pay the most. So I know that MASA, the school administrators, the head, met with Eric today, or sent him a letter. I can't remember specifically what it said, but sent the letter to Eric also from a superintendent's point of view, and I'm sure that was, I'm sure she informed him of what the superintendents were thinking across the state. So
It seems like you should be.
you would think that would be a more equitable response, but that's not the way it is. But the criteria is so it's not equal from the small schools to the big school. So,
It'd be interesting to know other state high school leagues in other states are putting it on the backs of their schools as well, too.
so I'll keep you updated. Hopefully better news by the next meeting. Come building updates. I have not heard from about the tree trimming. I will get a response hopefully soon about when that will be taking place. You probably saw in the paper that Austin was awarded just under $500K for the grant. That was the same grant Bradley and I applied for, and Ryan. Considering we have not heard, we're assuming that we did not get that grant. It was a COPS grant. It was a federal, and again, that would have helped with security with the doors, more cameras, things like that. But we will continue to look at ways we can still bring some of those features into the building and finding other things. If the public has noticed, our sign out there has not been changing too much. It's been mainly the time. We have been having some issues all summer that Jeff has been working on. There was even the company was willing to come out to fix it, to replace something for $2,000, but they still didn't know what the problem was. So Jeff is So know that Jeff is working on that, and he's not going to spend any more money than we have to do that. On a personal or personnel stuff, I want to, he's not on here. Gary Harrison, I wanted to extend my utmost appreciation to him on behalf of the school. I wrote down on my notes, I never met a person so committed to the purpose for educating and building of our students. He so loved our school, and on behalf of Lisle Public School, our students, our alumni, we want to say thank you. We appreciate all you've done. We will miss you, and we love having you in our lives. I think he did a fabulous job over the years, and as you see in his resignation, don't call me because I have a hard time saying no. So that's Gary and very clearly. So the other thing is, you know, with the whole COVID thing, a lot of soups have talked about the possibility of going into distance learning. And what we've all kind of determined that because of the number, like I said, Corey and I keep track of this day, it kind of fluctuates between 12 and 15, basically for the last month and a half. If we ever have to go into distance learning, it's not going to be because of that number. We're realizing it's going to be because of staffing. We're having trouble we've always had trouble with substitutes. That's going to be exemplified here. So I will keep you guys updated. We're getting creative on what we can do, but you know, we will, if it ever has to, that might be the reason we go to distance learning across the board.
The teachers are normal with the computers and everything. How are they doing?
Actually, it's been going really well. You know, the students in the building, we've had a couple of issues in the high school with students, you know, not having, you know, either not typing in the information or not having the right code. But overall, it's for the most part, it's coming really well. On Friday, they were very happy to be here. For the most part, there were a lot of students that said, "Oh, I wish we could come back more." I mean, they're okay. They're liking the routine that the distance learning Monday through Thursday is going through. It's much better than the spring where there wasn't a routine. But they are missing each other and missing, you know, in the building.
First put on for the kids. I mean, everything looks better.
We have actually in our calendar at the beginning of October to start looking based on numbers, you know, if we could start bringing the high school 7th and 8th grade at the minimum, maybe to bring them back sooner. We won't do that till the start of the quarter in November, but we want to have enough time to plan for it. You know, with the flu season right around the corner, we have no idea what's, you know, and the issue is if a staff member gets sick, based on this decision tree, they might be home for 2 weeks. And then we got to find another person to fill in, at least at the minimum, supervise those students while they're being taught remotely. So it's a very delicate balance that we're going to have to work through. And we just,
I mean, would you say we need a sub every day? I mean, every day?
we've, knock on wood, we've been good so far this year, but, and it's only the start, but last year, there were days where it was every day. So one of the thoughts we have, the money, the COVID dollars, we've actually talked about, you know, the possibility of a full-time, just a roaming sub. We had that a couple of years ago. It's going to be challenging to find a,
Mine just got hired full-time also.
so I just don't know. It's going to be challenging to find a sub, but there might be some out there. Okay, just a few more things. I want to thank the board just because I've started as a new soup. I've started a training called the Great Start Cohort. It was recommended by the MSBA and NASA. It was actually a very low cost for it, but it's basically allowing for me, it's about 12 of us across the state to just learn about soup and what ins and outs, how to work better with you guys and so on. So it's been very fortunate. I also have been with the Southeast Service Co-op, a mentor and I've received a mentee or mentor, I guess. And then today, Bradley and I sat through a tax levy training. That was exciting. A lot of numbers, a lot of, I actually did pull some out of it. It was,
Bradley was excited. but-
he was eating popcorn like crazy.
It was like
And then the last thing that I'm going to go through is just, Corey and I have spent some time discussing kind of some goals and focuses that we wanted to do. So I'm just going to read through those. These are not written in stone. I have not talked to the leadership team or, with staff, but we're in a situation where, like I said, the kids are so eager to come back to school, and a lot of them have been in their homes, and because of the COVID, they just haven't been out. So one of the areas is mental health, and we're focusing. We've done some training already with our staff on mental health. We're looking with guidance from Ms. Lorenz and IMS, how we can provide some more for students and staff. So that is one of the areas that we're going to focus on. Another one is resources, looking at it from a 30,000 foot lens, and then also in the trenches of where are areas that we can save some money, and be, or if not saving money, at least be more efficient and with the resources we have. So we've kind of narrowed it down to asking questions of why are we doing this? How will this help our students, staff, or district? What do we expect to get from this? And if we do not, or are not getting what we expect, then what? Is it really truly? And I know Corey has, for example, when she looked at some of the computer programs we were using, there was some doubling up. So we eliminated some of those uses, right? So saving the district some funds. So those are areas that we're looking at, just pulling, fixing the sieves a little bit. And then the last one, we've focused so much in the past on student achievement. We're changing it to building achievement. So what we're looking at is the engagement and then scholastic achievement from a student perspective. We've just completed or near completion of the FastBridge testing. So getting a baseline from all of our students where they're at, and then we can go from that. If we have MCA testing this April in March, that is going to be 2 years from the previous thing. So it's going to be, even that's going to be a baseline, but at least now with the FastBridge, we're looking at how we have a baseline, then the teachers can move forward. Looking at how we can increase staff engagement. As I told, I think it was Wendy, I told you the other night, I would love a year where we're not hiring a new teacher or new staff member. That would be wonderful. I've had that once in my career. That was a great summer. So our staff is fantastic and I want to keep them. So we're going to make sure they're engaged, they're enjoying it here, that they're being taken care of, and staying with us for several years. The last thing is just, Corey's been working on the curriculum development and kind of working through that, but last thing is branding of our school. How can we market ourselves? How better can we communicate? Things like that. So I've listened over the last 3 years to you guys, the concerns you've brought to the administration. So a lot of that is embedded in this. So I'm just asking from you, you don't have to say this now or anything, but if you, the next couple of days, if you think of anything else that you want Corey and I, or specifically me, to focus on for this year, I'm all ears. But again, a lot of those concerns you've brought forth are in here, but if there's anything else that comes to mind, we will definitely, look into it and how we can make the district better. So with that.
All right. So first of all, if you've been in the multipurpose room, you will notice that we have some new signage up on the wall. Some motivational quotes have been added. And that has been done by Krista, our school board member, and then Julie Rice, our preschool teacher. So thank you for doing that, because it looks awesome. And the kids have noticed, because some of them are like, this wasn't here last year. Did you do that? Because they asked me, because like I'm new and that's new. And I'm like, I did not do that. That was, and then I told them who it was. So they do appreciate it, and so do we. So thank you very much for that. Something else, we don't have signage on our floors yet, but we decided to go a different route. I think I may have mentioned it last school board meeting. Here is the sample of what's going on our floors, which is awesome. Julie designed and made these for us. So these are gonna start going on this week. I can, just so people can see that. Some curriculum updates for you. We did purchase another license for our math. Basically what we're doing with that is Alan Wynn, our teacher who's teaching the distance learning, we bought him an online subscription so that he has access to all the teacher resources and the student resources so that he can more effectively teach distance learning math. So that hopefully will come through by tomorrow. I know Bradley was super helpful in that, and then Betty was helping get that set up so quickly for us. And our distance learning has been going really well. I know a lot of the times you just kind of maybe see what's going on from the outside, so I just wanted to give you a quick tour of what's going on the inside. Alan has been teaching our distance learning kids in the morning, and then he's teaching high school Spanish in the afternoon. So he's working, I mean, he's technically teaching a lot of classes right now, but a lot of support as well, and he's doing a fantastic job with that. Our high school teachers have taken like a rough experience in the spring. I say rough because it was rough for all teachers across the country. A rough experience in the spring, and they have, from what I've seen, I've bopped into a lot of classes, I've interrupted a lot of the Zoom meetings. Kids are randomly seeing me just kind of like peek around the teachers' computers. But from what I have seen and from what I've heard, it's going well. I mean, of course, there's going to be hiccups. We're going to have some technology problems, but it's also still the second week of school. So I think we have to have that grace period, but otherwise it's been going pretty well from what we've been seeing. Our elementary and our specials teachers, as you can see in here, you are now in a second grade and third grade classroom, as well as our media center. This has been going, they've been doing great. The kids, you know, you walk in, you don't just see one of our special teachers reading a book. Now they're like singing the book along with the kids and really enjoying it. And it's been fun to see that experience because they specialize in a different area. So it's been fun to see them try something new and succeed at it. And they're getting to know kids in a more in-depth level instead of just knowing them for the whole. And it just, even our elementary, you know, asking them, hey, could you provide this for a distance learning teacher? Or could you try this? And, you know, I just dropped them another bomb tonight of, we have to do some bus transfer or some bus evacuation drills next week, guys. Like that's coming out too. So just a lot of flexibility with the teachers. Our SPED department had to rewrite all their IEPs or an amend them within it. And it was due yesterday. And I am proud to report that 5 out of 5 teachers completed it yesterday. So that is hours and hours and hours of work that they did. And they were exhausted and stressed, but just seeing that. And, you know, Title, she's working on getting everyone tested and she's almost done. And it's great. We're the second week of school and we're going to know where kids are at and we're going to be able to meet them right where they're at. So that's also fantastic. We implemented Cubs Club this year. So we thought we'd give you a little update on that because this is also new. The first day, we may have been scrounging because we weren't even sure really what we were planning for it. We just knew we had adults to care for kids and we had a space for them to go. Well, if you remember the first week of school, it was raining. And these kids needed to go somewhere. So first day, maybe a little hiccup or 10, but overall it ended up, it's going really well. The kids are super involved and active. If you see them outside after school, that's why. It's because our pairs are outside with them. And they have been so wonderful leading this club. So I've been really proud and impressed with that.
So how many have been?
We have 16, right?
13 now.
13 now? Okay, 13. Yep, and we just went with tier 1. We don't feel that we were prepared and organized enough to open up more yet. Maybe in the future, but opening up a school and developing that plan and then getting all of our other ducks in a row. We have a teacher teaching just distance learning, but then we've got high school teachers doing distance learning as well as having them come in. And we just really wanted to make sure that we could care for all the kids that were in there instead of just plopping people in there and saying, have at it. Because that's not successful for anyone. So, and then there have been transportation issues in other districts, but it has been, knock on wood, so smooth here. It has been so great. And I don't know if transportation has always been this smooth, but I have been so impressed. I have seen Dawn in this building more times, just making sure that schedules are up to date and everyone has a place to go, and she's communicating and making sure that we can get as many kids on as we can. And It's been all of our bus drivers and van drivers. It's been, you should just be proud. Basically, like, I'm going through this list in my head of all these people, like our kitchen staff just got dropped this new information that lunch and breakfast is free, and they had to change everything they're doing, and they did it gracefully, and they're doing it with smiles on their faces and making it work. And it's been wonderful. Everyone in Lyle just is coming together, and I love it. Yeah, I know it should. Everyone deserves it, but that's what I have.
Do you want me to talk now, Jamie? Is that why you did that, or? All right. Mr. Goebel asked that I come to the meeting tonight and talk briefly about a class trip. For those of you who aren't familiar, a couple of years ago, we wanted to get away from kind of the traditional class trip we had been doing to do something a little bit better, bigger, and certainly more educational as well too. So a couple of years ago, for the first time, we went to Washington, D.C. With the juniors and seniors. We are due to do that trip again this year. So myself and Mr. Goebel and Ms. Shepard met with the company that we went with last time to kind of discuss that and kind of where we're at, particularly this year as far as the trip is concerned. And basically what we've kind of decided to do, we've scheduled dates actually that is scheduled for April 7th through the 14th. It'll still be for juniors and seniors. We started talking about this last year. Started fundraising actually last year as well too. And obviously we're gonna have to see what happens. Obviously nobody knows what's anything is gonna be like come April, you know, as far as, you know, particularly as far as COVID and stuff is concerned. We're really very much hoping that this trip is something that we'll still be able to do by then. Who knows though, as I said. There are a few concerns, obviously. We've lost a few fundraising opportunities. So that's gonna create a little bit of an issue perhaps, you know, fall concessions, potentially lost, who knows what winter concessions, if we have them, what they look like, if we can even do them. Those are some bigger fundraising things that we're a little bit concerned about as far as for raising money for this trip. Otherwise, individuals are gonna have to make some decisions as far as parents and stuff. We have a meeting scheduled for next Friday with the representative from the company. She comes down and she'll meet with all of the juniors and seniors to discuss the trip and kind of give the layout of what it is and things like that. And then there's a parent meeting the following Sunday, 4th of October, something like that. That information will come out where parents can come in and ask questions as well too. It is a fantastic trip. Like I said, we did this trip a couple of years ago. We took 24 kids. I think at the last time they usually want right around 30. So that'll certainly be our goal. We'll have to see if we can kind of hit that number. They were pretty generous the last time to let us go with less people. They did charge us a little bit more to kind of make up for some of that. But I think they wanted to see this opportunity for us to do this. So we'll see. I was impressed with the company. Again, they've already started making some adjustments, thinking through what might need to happen here. Under a COVID thing, they changed all their air filtration systems in their buses. As an example, she talked about that. They put in a bunch of, you know, hand sanitizing station on the buses and things like that. Obviously, the trip is going to be based on, you know, what's open, what we can do. You know, if we were to go right now, you know, the U.S. Capitol is closed, all the Smithsonian's are closed, it wouldn't be much of a trip necessarily. So we are hopeful that we will be able to go on this trip. So does anybody have any questions about it? I could talk a lot more, but I don't really want to, but I can if you want to know more about what the trip actually involves or things like that, or what we do and stuff like that.
I'll just mention also with that meeting, it was for someone who's lived in DC and that surrounding area to see the itinerary. I really hope that these kids can go just because of everything they're going to experience. And I experienced it for 3 years, and I hope for 2 weeks these kids can experience it. So the company that Brian has worked with is actually, you know, they have they're working on protocols and precautions and everything. So I think overall, we can feel confident that if, you know, that precautions will be in place for students to go if the students and parents feel it's safe enough, as well as, you know, considering whatever circumstances we are in as a school and across the nation. So.
All right, that's all I got. I'll turn it over to Ms. Shepherd to talk about the other trip then.
Brian, there's one question, and I think
Oh, sorry.
I was curious if it wouldn't happen, what would happen like with the senior kids that were
Yeah.
like, I mean, would they have the opportunity to go, you know, I mean, would they do it next year then, or?
so. Brian, the question is what happens if they're not able to go? What happens to the seniors and then future years? So we haven't really. Go ahead.
Certainly, that's some of our biggest concern with this, because obviously, you know, some trips you could shift to the next class. The seniors would be the biggest concern with that necessarily. Obviously, the company this last year, for, you know, because they had a bunch of trips planned in the spring, they did end up providing a full refund to all of those kids as well, too, for anybody who was unable to kind of reschedule the trip. Most of them, they pushed it to the fall or pushed it someplace else. So that would be a possibility. The other option is we have had students pass money on to younger siblings for a future trip as well, too, so that money isn't necessarily lost either. We have allowed them to, then Bradley can probably talk even about that perhaps, because that was part of his thing there as well, too. So just if Jed couldn't go, for example, you know, as a senior this year, he could potentially, if he's raised money, that money could pass on to Mac then, as an example. And I know that's what they've kind of done as far as it was last year. The only thing we'd have to decide, and we didn't quite decide this one even in our meeting, is if we would try to do something different for the seniors. But that's a Mr. Global decision probably. And the hard part about that is if we can't go to DC, I'm not sure where we could go either. That becomes the next issue. Where else are we going to go that's necessarily going to be open or safe or something too? So unless we want to do a nice camping trip or something like that, but I don't know. So I hope that answers the question, I think, hopefully.
Chicago is any safer right now.
Right, yes, absolutely.
Maybe.
Edward.
All right, we'll move on to Cynthia. Similar trip, but a little different.
Hiya. So you guys probably all know by now that Mrs. Renke doesn't work at Lyle anymore.
What?
Yeah, I know. Crazy, right?
Surprises.
But she was the one who started the Spanish Club trips and did all those trips all those years. And now that she's gone, sort of asked around, and our new Spanish teacher is not as excited about leading up trips for that as Sarah was, and that's fine. I've talked a lot to Brian about international trips or travel in general, and we both find travel to be valuable learning experience and just valuable all around. And so the thing that I've kind of been kicking around is to change Spanish Club from a Spanish language based trip to just some sort of international type of travel club or international trip club or something. I wanted to call it Culture Club.
You got some laugh.
Finally.
That was pretty sarcastic.
I'm glad everybody was in the right age range to get that joke, because it didn't hit in all cases when I used it before. Anyway, and so we're just kind of kicking the idea around about what would the next trip be. I would kind of like to do like a UK sort of England, Scotland trip. And that would be it would be the summer of 2022. Is that right?
Yes.
2022 would be the summer of that trip. So that would be this year's juniors and sophomores, correct? That's okay. I just got to make sure I get all that right. I don't know that we necessarily need like board approval. I don't really know what the process is there. But it is something that I'd like to continue. I've looked at some of the EF trips, and you don't need to do a language-based trip in order to get an educational experience for the students. There's trips that are history-based. There's trips that are science or ecology-based. And so there's a lot of options for that. Basically that's the idea, is that if we do want to continue travel as an important part of our culture for our students, we need to talk about it now, because they do need to start fundraising now for a trip that will be in 2 years.
So in the action and discussion, you'll see to change the club. We talked about an international club, but she just mentioned travel club. I thought that was kind of neat too. So I don't know if we, just to change it so it's more well-rounded to the student body to see it as there isn't that they have to take the Spanish classes to do it. This would be more well-rounded to other students.
I'm assuming Shepherd's gonna be in charge of it.
She has volunteered to be in charge of it, right, Cynthia?
Well, it is a Schedule C activity, so
No, so volunteer isn't the right word, you're saying?
I mean, there is a stipend attached to it from Schedule C, but it doesn't necessarily have to be me. I just want to see this continue because I think it's valuable for our students. If somebody else was like, I'm really into that, I'd rather do it, I would be willing to share or give that up. I just want to make sure that we keep it as something we can offer to our students.
I love the trips and I'm thankful that you guys have continued to want to take that on. And they're just such great experiences for our students.
As a club, are there any gathering where they actually learn? You talk about it being an international club where it's cultural, or really this is just a travel club?
So
I'm just curious. I don't
are you
know.
talking here or once
Like
they're over
past
there?
trips, you mean?
No, like, what is the premise? I mean, Spanish club, you usually think Spanish club is a gathering and you might have some educational opportunity, or if it's just every 3 years you plan an international trip. And changing this to international club, like, if this is an extracurricular, is this just planning a trip every 3 years for the students, or if there's other?
Cynthia, are you hearing the question?
I can hear the question. I guess I might even want to defer to Brian. Can you speak to the history of the Spanish club, what Sarah kind of wanted? Because they had to do like 2 years of Spanish in order to sort of qualify to go, right?
Yes, that's correct. They basically had to fulfill Spanish 1 and Spanish 2. Beyond that, there really wasn't any type of real requirement for that as far as the trip was concerned. I mean, there's fundraising to do that. And it's every 2 years, by the way, too, just because we kind of want to plan these as alternate every other year. So like the DC trip would be 1 year, and then the international, and DC and international, just so they're not overlapping quite as much for fundraising as well, too, was part of the desire for that. I'm kind of with you. I'm not sure I'm understanding the question. Like, do you want them to be extra things for them to have to do to be able to go? Is that what you're saying? Or I'm not sure I'm understanding the question either.
Is it, we're designating it as a club because it's something that you plan a trip for and people get to sign up and that's their camaraderie? Or is it something that's international and they want to actually learn about different cultures or different
They got
something?
together and put on an international food fair or
Yes,
something like
things
that,
like
right?
that, of
Yeah.
expanding horizons within the school and the cultural diversity. I'm just curious. I didn't know what this was.
That might be something we could discuss.
I'm not saying
I
I'm
know.
fair either way. I'm just.
I think it's a great question that you're asking, and I think it's something that if they choose where they want to go, since you mentioned potential for Scotland, okay? So I could see the students, they're not going to just get together, fundraise and go, like they're going to have to learn about where they're going at some point. So I could see potential for having some research involved as to where they're going and basically make it hands-on and help. I mean, this is a very adult experience. Have them help plan some of it. Not necessarily the itinerary, because I think that goes, Cynthia, Brian, you can correct me, like I feel like that goes along with some of the travel agencies you work with, but
yes,
having them take ownership in some of the itinerary and learning about it, because I mean, as adults, do you remember your first trip that you ever had to plan with your family and you're like, I have to be the one to do this now. You know, so it's another life experience for them on top of just going.
I know there's, while on the trip, there's education. I know the DC trip, for instance, as they're traveling, they're talking about where they're going. They're talking about the historical perspective and things like that. And I know for, if it was England, everything would be lined up in the educational base. But I hear your question is, could it be something before? Yep. Before here,
I'm asking if
absolutely.
Is it something that's private or really is it just a trip club, which is fine. I don't care. But it could be. I'm just wondering what it was.
I think it can go either way. I think for me wanting to continue and introduce more students to traveling, especially traveling internationally, in my experiences, I found that there's just really a lot of like just being in another country and understanding their money, understanding do you tip, do you not tip, understanding their daily customs, even like when they eat, what the big, just all those cultural things that you can read in a book, but you don't actually feel them until you get there, is a huge, huge opportunity for students. And for some people, it may be the only international trip they get to take. My mother-in-law is 65 and she still talks about the trip she took to London in high school. And that's the only time she's really been out of the country. And so to share that with the students, even if they don't have to write a paper beforehand or do a bunch of this beforehand, I think that experience in and of itself is valuable enough to justify doing it, I guess is my point.
Any other questions? Well, thank you very much, Cynthia and Brian.
All right, moving on to items for action discussion. Certified 2020 table 2021 preliminary levy certification.
Carrie.
All right, that's me up again. Okay, Jamie still has his mic on. Okay, that'll be a little better. You have in your packets a summary of our proposed levy certification. The numbers have actually changed already. So what we customarily do is we approve, it's on the last page, if you're trying to find it there. What is asked of us at this point is to approve a preliminary levy, and we refer to that as doing it at the maximum level. What ultimately happens here is that the levy is a work in progress. We started working on it in July, and you'll have the final version of it to approve in December at our Truth in Taxation meeting. In the meantime, the state wants us to approve on a preliminary basis. Either we say we're doing it at maximum or a specific dollar amount. Why we don't recommend doing a specific dollar amount is because formulas get adjusted and things get changed, and we may be able to essentially get more money by waiting in order to get all those things taken care of. So the biggest thing that can change is I'm able to plug in new estimates for pupil units. You know, right now we're a week and a half into school. We'll continue to get better data about how many kids are going to be here and how many are going to stick, and be able to use those estimates to look ahead at what's going to happen next year and the year after. So what you're seeing on the page there, and I can tell you that this has changed twice already since I made the summary, but our general fund levy is on this report actually showing a decrease, but it's now pretty close to flat based on the last two changes. Either way, if you can show a property tax levy that is decreasing or flat, that generally makes people a lot happier than one that's going up. So our general fund levy is now flat, our community service levy is flat, and our debt service fund levy is declining. So good news from that standpoint. This time last year, we were talking about an operating referendum that passed, and the first round of that operating referendum was included in the levy that people have been paying this year. This is the second year that levy will be effective. So in the comparison that you're looking at these 2 years, that referendum is in both of those years. I'll have more to say about all this in December when we have our Truth in Taxation meeting. So if anybody's got any questions, I'll do my best to answer them. If not, I'll get out of the way.
All right. Moving on to B, consider the change in name from Spanish Club to International Club. Any thoughts on that? Carl makes a motion. Andy, yep. All those in favor? Aye, opposed? School board member comments. Anybody? All
I'd just like to say thank you.
right.
Much appreciated.
I do just want to say too, that Friday that the older kids were in the building was a great day. It was a great day. So I just want you guys to know that they're so excited to come back to school, and it was great to have that happen. So
You can see it at football.
you can just, yeah,
It just, they're just so happy to talk to someone, not see a text or snap or.
yeah,
It's- We have 28 kids of it, 9 through 12, so I think that's some reason why.
yeah, they're needing that.
Yep.
So, if there's no other comments, is there a motion to adjourn?
I'll second.
Of course you did. All those in favor?
Actually, you got.
All right. Adjourned at 7:04.